I'm going to be looking at this, the AIRFIX Cutty Sark kit. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to another unboxing. I'm going to be looking at something a little bit vintage. I'm going to be looking at this, the AIRFIX Cutty Sark kit. So this is a 1 to 130 scale, which is a bit odd in today's sort of standards, but considering this kit was tooled in 1967, I guess it's sort of understandable that it's a little bit different from today. So being over 50 years old, it's amazing that it's survived the test of time. It's got new boxing, which looks quite neat, but AIRFIX is quite renowned for their early kits, and this has been re-released in their vintage classics range. So let's open up the box and we'll see what it's all about. All right, so from the top camera, you can see I just barely get the whole box in here because it's a very long box. And you see how it's depicted with all the sails, all the rigging, because it is fully rigged. So if we open this up, let's do it this way, you will see we have basically a bag which contains all of the components, and then you see there's some sails on the bottom as well. So why don't I'll leave this out, pop this to the side, and let's see what we get inside this big bag. So packaging is very old school, and as such we've got little loose bits that have sort of come off as well. All right, what have we got here? We have some reels of thread. There's different thicknesses here, and that's for the rigging. Just see there, this one's the thicker one. Let's move that aside. So this is the thicker one, and this one is the finer one, as you can see there. So I'll be using these for the general rigging of the sails and also for doing the rat lines. Okay, you can see how there's much more of the thin one than the heavy one. So it's good that they give you the rigging, that's all included. Okay, so these are all your loose bits. So we'll work out where they go a bit later, but this is the sort of thing that you're sort of used to with an old kit. You've got a bit of flash, sort of floats around. That's natural for an over 50-year-old kit as well. And then I just noticed that these parts are actually numbered. You don't see that anymore. So that's numbered, so there's no way you can mistake that. That's numbered. This may not be, but that's easily recognizable anyway. Okay, so we've got some loose bits, let's put them aside. We've got this thing here. This is a rigging tool or a rigging machine. Now, if we get closer, this is actually two parts to this. So they're all molded on the one sprue. You may see that there's actually numbers molded into this, so you can understand the spacing. And then you put the two pieces together so that you can actually work out how to do the horizontal and also the vertical lines for the rat lines. Okay, and there's the other piece here. So that all fits together, and that's got measurements in there as well. And this just helps you put all the thread and make it all really even as you're building them up. And then once you've got this all loomed up, you apply some really thin, say, wood glue, let it set, and then you can chop them up and you'll have them all preformed. So that's a little machine to help you make it all look very nice. Okay, so that's your rigging machine. All right, let's pick up some bits here. All right, let's look at this one. All molded in a tan colored plastic. So we've got the top of the decking here, so main deck. There is some wood grain finish. I guess it's not actually wood grain finish, it's the timber finish, and it's got raised details on it. And that's simply because in the time that they cut these molds, actually putting the engraving into the mold itself is easier than having a line in the mold for doing engraved lines. So hence why this is sort of reverse to what we expect. All the lines are raised on here, when nowadays we talk about engraved panel lines are being far superior. And that's simply because making a mold to do that is more difficult. So in this particular period, in the late 60s, this would have been absolutely acceptable. And in a way, you just have to work in the reverse fashion when you're doing panel lines. So instead of having a wash going through engraved panel lines, you'll be dry brushing this to get that detail to come through. So you've got the those covers there in your front end. You've got lifeboats, multi-piece, some davits, There's some frameworks. There's a bit like this frame here, which we lost before. That probably goes there. Fits there like a glove. I think got some little ladders and things there too. Okay, so you can see how the detail is fairly soft, but there's not a lot of flash. There's some obvious flash here, but it's not too bad. It's not like it's all one sheet of plastic like some really bad old kits. It's actually fairly clean. Okay, now let's move on to another part. So we've got these. Now this would be parts on the side of the ship as well. Now the Cutty Sark is one of those old tea clippers. So they used to use these for collecting the tea from China and then trying to get it back to England as fast as possible, because they didn't want the tea to go bad, I guess. And the fresher the tea, the earlier season, the more money they could make. So this is most famous simply because it was the fastest of the time as well. Okay, so we've got these little bits there. I don't know what they are. We'll find out in the manual later. You got a little stand, a cross-shaped stand with some standoffs, a little bit bent. Okay, so this would have bent as it's come out of the mold, because there probably wasn't as much understanding with shrinkage and such, because after you pull hot plastic out of a mold, it's going to shrink at different rates depending on the shapes. So hence it's bowed. But you can quite easily fix that by putting it into hot water and then just reshaping it. And when you hold it like this and cools down, it'll maintain its shape. Okay, so you've got a stand there. What have we got here? So you can see how the runners are really thick and chunky. That's basically what they had to do to be able to get the plastic to flow well. And you do have some really fine details here, which surprisingly have come through fairly cleanly. So I'm not sure if they've actually maintained this mold very much, whether they've recut it or such, or whether or not it was just cut very well in the first place. These are all your fine deck details. You've got the ship's wheel and such, right there. Nice little signed placard here as well. So you can see that, Cutty Sark, 1869. You can quite easily paint that and then dry brush the lettering. Got a bulkhead on the inside to support the hull. There's a rudder. You've got some of the upper decking there, and you can see, if I can get the shadows right, you can see the detail that's molded into the surface. Some side details, and then some more of these fine details there. And here's where I was talking about how clean they are. You got a bit of flashing in that one there that hasn't coped too well. So you need to trim those bits off. But everything else is really clean. And I mean, if you like to build one of these simply because of nostalgia, because you built one as a child, there's nothing wrong with building another one. I think it'll turn out to be a really nice model. Okay, what else we got? Now we've got the two chunky bits. Okay, we've got the sides. Oh, let's zoom that out again. Otherwise you're not going to see what's going on. Here we go. So we've got the hull sides. Okay, so here we have all the detail of the metal cladding. So this ship apparently was on a wrought iron framework with timber. So quite a new design at the time, and it proved to be very, very successful. And then we've got lengths for all the masts along here. Huge runners again, and that's all protecting it all. They're all intact, which is great. And then we have this side of the hull as well. Oh, lost another bit. All right, so there's another part there. We'll put that aside. And here's the other side of the hull with parts of the masts. Now, if I come in here, you'll be able to just see. I'm going to do the focus on the thumb thing. How's that? No, not working? How's that? And you can see the detail that's on the side. This would have been spectacular in the time it was made. I think it's still pretty decent now for a really old kit. And quite often, kits excel from the paintwork. You can see the masters that paint oils in art museums, and you have to think about they're doing that two-dimensionally, and they can bring so much depth. Even with like 3 dimensions, by manipulating the paint and how you apply it, you can make things appear where they're not. So if you're clever at doing that, you can make this absolutely spectacular. Okay, so that's all the plastic. Now, apart from the plastics, these, they're the sails. And these sails are on very thin plastic here. They've been vacuum formed. So vacuum forming allows them to be very thin, so that when you cut these out, they're actually going to look like they're billowing full of air. You can see that isn't a new thing, but it's one of those things you don't see very much anymore. So vac forming is something that I think has become quite fashionable now because you can get home vac forming machines, but this is a very clever way of doing the sails. You can see they're all marked and they're very easy to follow which one goes with which. Now if I zoom in a bit there, you see the surface detail. So it does have this fabric look, and then when you brush paint over that, it'll look even better. Then on the other side too. So these are sails. So from the looks of it, that's pretty much all the plastics. Let's have a look at the manual. Okay, so you've got multiple languages there. And then you've got a set of flags. So they're designed to look like they're blowing in the wind. And these are self-adhesive. So you just got to peel them off the backing, press them together as you fold them across around the top of the mast. Okay, from there we've got our assembly instructions. You got a legend of how to read all these symbols. And then this is surprising, in part one, you're building most of it. Okay, so you got the whole hull put together with the decking and the mizzen. And then from there, once you got the bulk of it done, it's doing all the finer details. So we're getting into the lifeboats here. Another boat there. You're doing the bow, stern, all little bits and pieces along the deck. We've got all these side parts here. Don't know what you call them, but you've got all these parts of the rigging, cat's eyes and such. And then we get into doing the 3 masts. They're quite involved. And then we get to mount them all onto the ship's hull. And then we go about making all these rat lines, which they call the shrouds. So there's quite a lot of, I guess, chart involved, so you know exactly what size goes where. So they split it up. Across the top you got C1, 2, 3, and then in the middle C4, C5, C6. So you need to cross-reference it here and work out where it all starts on the actual rigging machine. So you know the rigging machine I showed you before, so that's got all these letters and such on it, and that's how you go about making them. Over here is the general rigging across all the masts on this side as well, and each one is numbered, and across this chart it will tell you what size thread to use and also what length, so that makes it easy too. And then as we do that, let's see, over here we've got the sails, and each sail is marked so you know exactly where they're meant to go as well. And from there, that's pretty much completion of the kit. We have detailed instructions on how to use the rigging machine. So step by step. So you've got A, B, C, D, E steps, just so you know how to use it and how to make all the different shapes. So every single different shape you need of those shrouds, you'll be able to do it on this one machine that they've included. And then here's the painting instructions. Very, very simple. There's only 4 colors there. So there we go. So that is my open box review of this very, very vintage, seeing that was cut in 1967, still being produced, the AIRFIX Cutty Sark in 1 to 130th scale. Cutty Sark, very famous, huge looking clipper, it's got so many sails on it, and it'll be quite a bit of work to do. So these sort of ship kits are a lot simpler than, say, a timber plank by plank kit, but they're still involved. So if you like ships, it would definitely look good once it's been painted and put on your mantelpiece. So give it a go. Now, if you like that review, please give me a like below. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. So thank you very much.